Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down the Thursday night football game here between the Titans and the Steelers on DraftKings, $500,000 up top to first place. I'll be talking through my favorite plays, how to get different on this slate, as well as my core plays for this Thursday night football game here. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get right into this breakdown. Follow me on Twitter at HartDFS. So recapping last Thursday night, we had my early look lineup had four out of the six core plays there with Josh Allen. uh, who else was in that? I know it was 4 out of 6, so it was great there. Um, Monday Night Football 2 days ago. I mean, what was that? What was that Devontae Adams game? It was just infuriating. That was a wild 0. I don't think he had a target in the first half, and then second half, 2 like what 100-yard touchdowns Devontae could have had that Jimmy Garoppolo just one of them obviously he had nailed a little bit hard, but he threw it out of bounds. And the other one, it was just wide open. He just chucked out of bounds once again. So that was just a bizarre game there for Devontae. Yeah, the Raiders in shambles. But anyways, we have the Titans and the Steelers. Going to be an absolutely disgusting game here. I'm not going to lie. Disgusting. 3-point spread right now, favorite to the Steelers. 37 game total. Absolutely disgusting. We have two just god awful teams. I'm sorry. If you're a Pittsburgh fan, your team sucks. I mean, I think everyone knows that offensively. You guys are awful. Obviously, a great defense. Really good. Your defense is pretty much you guys' offense, which is crazy. So, yeah, I mean, just absolutely disgusting game here. I'm already assuming the public are probably going to stack up on Pittsburgh, maybe have one or two. It's going to be like a 4-2, 5-1 stack. Pittsburgh compared to Tennessee. That's going to be the chalky route. As well as, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers defense is like 50% owned. It's going to be egregious. And it's one of those things that if you end up playing them, the defense, they're going to do absolutely nothing. Or if you don't play them and you fade them at 50% ownership, which you should, that's a smart thing to do. I guarantee they go for like 4 pick sixes. It's going to be very frustrating. So I'd suggest playing light here for the slate because it's going to be super frustrating. But heading over here to the Tennessee Titans side, let's start off with the snap count, just to get a little bit better of understanding here. As they said in week 8, there's going to be a split committee here between Will Levis and Malik Willis. As you can see, that was absolutely a lie because Will Levis played 97% of snaps. Malik Willis only came in for 2. Obviously, because Will Levis came in and just absolutely started torching the opposing team there with D Hop, 4 touchdowns there. So it's pretty much, they did say that they're still going to do a little bit of a committee there, but I really expect them to just kind of stick with Will Levis unless, Will Levis absolutely gets off to a horrific start, which, could happen, but I think Will Levis is the safe option for now. Derrick Henry, it's his backfield. I know the splits have been wild. It's just because their team has been god awful. Obviously, if it's a game that's they're losing by a touchdown or more, they're going to look to Tajay Spears to be that pass catching back. So that's the only downside there with Derrick Henry is in a game that they're not favored, it's already the odds are stacked against him. So a lot of people are going to go to Tajay Spears, which probably makes Derrick Henry a little bit under owned than he should be because we know the upside there with him, especially if they get off to a hot start there, go up like a score or two, they're going to absolutely ride Derrick Henry. Pause. Wide receiver situation. D Hop is obviously wide receiver 1, but he is questionable. That's the big news there on the Titans side with the toe injury. Did not practice today. So keep an eye out on that because that's massive news there. Obviously, if he's good to go, he'll be wide receiver 1. Westbrook will be wide receiver 2. And then they'll mix in Traylon Burks, who wide receiver 3, but they did play a lot of Chris Moore there. So they're running like 4 wide receiver sets, and they did have Kyle Phillips as well. So random 5 wide receiver set there in week 8, which is interesting because the previous weeks it was pretty much a 4 wide receiver set. If there was no D Hop, I expect it just to be Westbrook to be wide receiver 1, Traylon Burks to be wide receiver 2, and then obviously Moore and Kyle Phillips will see a ton there as wide receiver 3 and 4. So nothing too crazy there. I think everyone's firmly in play, especially Kyle Phillips. I mean, 18 snaps, then 27 in week 6, 13 in week 5. So he's getting enough snaps to make it into a lineup here. Tight end situation, it's been the Okonkwo show. Hasn't done a ton, but yeah, he's seen about 70+% of the snaps. Wesco's mixing in for good amounts, but he's not really getting targeted much. If we take a look at the targets real fast here, as you can see, Wesco seen the most tight end targets, or excuse me, the most run there as the backup tight end to Okongwu, and he's only seen 2 targets there. So nothing too crazy there for the tight end situation in terms of the backups. And then if we get over to Pittsburgh real fast here, the big news here is that Kenny Pickett is good to go. And I do think they listed him as the starter. Yeah, it looks like he should be the starter. I don't think they officially announced it yet, but he should be good to go. And no other big news here. Obviously, Pat Fryermuth is still on IR. Otherwise, fully healthy team in terms of DFS of who we're picking from. But to the snap count real fast here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's just take a quick peek. Um, that's the targets. Let's go to snap counts. Snap count here. The running back situation is pretty much a 50-50 split. Obviously, Najee Harris is the big bruiser back. Jalen Warren can, be a bruiser back as well, but he's also very talented out of the backfield in terms of catching the ball. So, very interesting here in terms of the running back situation. Obviously, Jalen Warren was going to be way more popular than Najee Harris because everyone shits on Najee Harris. But still, I mean, you can use that to your advantage, get a low on Najee Harris, and if he does have a breakout game for absolute miracle, or if he does smash in for a touchdown, you're gonna be sitting pretty there at low ownership. Pickens, wide receiver one, he should be playing about pretty much every single snap. Wide receiver two is Deontay Johnson there. They're wide receiver one and two there. I'd say Deontay's wide receiver one, Pickens wide receiver two. But obviously, they're both going to be playing 90% of the snaps. Wide receiver three will be Allen Robinson. And then they will mix in some Calvin Austin there as well as the wide receiver four. And then tight end situation, it's been the Connor Hayward show. And then Darnell Washington's been the backup. I don't know how many uh, targets Connor Hayward has gotten. Let's see. Week 7, 3, week 8, 6. So decent amount there. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown, the preview. Now let's get into the slate here. On the Tennessee Titans side, let's go to the flex plays. Derrick Henry. So as I mentioned there, a little preview. It really depends on ownership. One, if he's going to be high owned or low owned, and two, how you think this game script's going to go. So if you think they're going to be down to the Steelers, you're probably going to want to either fade Derrick Henry and go with Tajay Spears, or just fade both of the running backs altogether. Because obviously, if it's a game where they're down a lot, it could be one of these games here where Derrick Henry sees only 11, 13 snaps, doesn't go for many yards, and maybe gets a catch or two out of the backfield. Has a pretty bad game there. Because we know he's a very low floor if it's a game where they need to pass a lot, because they'll look to Tajay Spears there, who's very, very cheap, which makes even more appealing to the general public. Seeing a ton of targets, averaging like 4 targets a game, getting a few snaps as well out of the backfield. So yeah, I mean, I do think people are going to flock to Tajay Spears, and if Derrick Henry comes in at like 30% ownership or even less, I'm going to absolutely jam him into my lineups because we know the upside there with him is massive, even against a tough defense here in Pittsburgh. I love me some Derrick Henry. D Hop, if he's good to go, I think he's a fine play. He's pretty expensive here, even though he's wide receiver one. I mean, it's hard to trust there. 4 catches for 6 targets, and he had 4 of those catches were 3 touchdowns. It is just insane. Obviously, you can't expect that production. Very, very expensive. So it'll be interesting to see if he's low owned. Don't mind getting to him there at the price tag, but if he's going to be decently owned there across the board for the wide receivers, not much interest for me, just because he's very, very expensive there, and I'd rather get to other plays. Will Levis, I think he's a fine play there. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens here in terms of regression. Obviously, 4 touchdowns, fantastic first game, but still, he is a guy that does have some rushing upside. As you can see, 7 attempts, 11 yards, wasn't efficient, but still, I think he's a very, very strong flex play because of that rushing upside there. Malik Willis, if you want to get super, super cute, you could definitely go to him. Maybe Will Levis gets off to a terrible start. Maybe they do end up using him in like maybe 5 to 10 snaps, and one of them turns into a huge play or a rushing touchdown. Sure, but if you're going to be playing a few lineups, I would not go that route. Only if you're 150 maxing. Tajay Spears, as I mentioned, will be super, super popular. I mean, he's a very, very cheap price tag for a guy who's already seen a split backfield basically. And obviously, if they're down, they're going to look to him a ton out of the backfield there as the main pass catching back. So it's really just an ownership play for me. If he's going to be super, super popular, I'm personally not going to go there. It's not like he's a bad play, but more so I like to play contrarian and probably would get to Derrick Henry, but still a great price tag for a guy who's seen 40% or more of the snaps out of the backfield, has that pass catching upside. So really, really strong play there for Tajay Spears. Even if it is a game script where they're up, he still will get utilized. I think both the kickers on both teams are very, very firmly in play. Titans defense is going to be super low owned. You can definitely go to them. I mean, Kenny Pickett has not been the best. They did trade away, was it Kevin Byard? So not, not their full strength Titans defense, but still, they can randomly get a pick six. You never know. And then moving on down here, I do like Okongwu here, 4,200. I mean, he's seen a decent amount of targets, 9, 4, and 6. Obviously, that this first the latest game here, 6 targets with Will Levis in the backfield. Was nice to see there. So I think he's a pretty strong play there at 4,200. Hasn't had like a huge game yet this season, but I mean, seeing 6 targets, that's pretty solid there. And he does have that big playability. Traylon Burks is going to be super contrarian there. I think it's just a fine contrarian option. No real strong take on him if you land on him as a value play. Same thing with Westbrook. It really depends on if D Hop is in. If D Hop's in, these guys are just kind of contrarian plays that you kind of fall on if you're looking for some cheap options. If D Hop is out, obviously both become way stronger plays. I think it's even a huge bump to Okonkwo, and it's a bump to Tajay as well, just in terms of the passing plays. And then Phillips will be a solid, super super cheap option, cheap dart throw option down here. Moving on to the Pittsburgh side, at the top we have Kenny Pickett, 9,200. I think he's a fine play. If you look at his box score, it's pretty disgusting. But we're going to, against the Tennessee Titans defense, which is kind of middle of the pack. Kenny could have some upside. I mean, it's been bad, but I think it's an okay play. Moving on down here to Pickens. I'll say with Deontay back, I prefer getting to Deontay, even though they're pretty much priced about the same here. Pickens is going to be more of your boomer bust guy, super high variance. Has those huge playability, huge play upside. Only caught 1 catch that last game, but still, it was for a touchdown, 22 yards. As you can see, the previous game, 31-yard catch, 41-yard catch. So he has that big playability and big play upside. So if you want to go that riskier route, he's your guy. But if you want to go more so the safe route, a guy who's going to get peppered with targets, mostly so in the short to medium range. Doesn't have like a ton of big play ability and upside there just because he's a great, kind of slot guy there. It's going to be Deontay Johnson who you want to go to for that like safe floor and pretty solid ceiling. So I'm going to throw him in for right now at 8,400, and then we'll work out the captain here in a second. But Najee Harris, as I mentioned, kind of like it's funny because it's like both these running back situations for both teams it's going to be like backups are going to be way more popular than both the starters. So with Najee, I mean, he's seen a good amount of opportunities, you can see. Since week 2, 10, 19, 14, 14, 14, obviously 7 against Jacksonville. They were down. They had Mitch Trubisky. It was a gross game there, but he saw 5 targets out of the backfield. So, I mean, I do have some interest here in Najee. He's going to be super low owned and does have a little bit of upside. And then, Jalen Warren's going to be super, super popular. Averaging about 8 rushing attempts per game. He's averaging about, 3.5 targets per game as well. So once again, one of those scenarios where Evan's going to flock to Tajay Spears. Evan's going to flock to Jalen Warren, the backup running backs, because they're cheaper and they have that pass catching ability. But, be wary. Showdown is unexpected. I'm just going to say, those guys are going to be super, super popular. They're good plays, but I like playing contrarian and I wouldn't mind going to both the starting running backs. Steelers defense, as I mentioned, 5,600. I'm sure they're going to be like 15% owned in the captain spot, and they'll probably be like 60% owned in the flex spot. I really don't know what I'm going to do here. I really don't know. I hate playing defense, especially when they're above 4.5K, especially when they're like above 5K, above 5.5K. It's egregious. Most of the time, it does not work out when defenses are this expensive. Even though if they're a good defense or not, because it's pretty random. You really need a defensive touchdown or to be a very, very gross and low scoring game, which right now Vegas is predicting. But you never know. And so for that reason, if they're going to be above 35%, they're a bad play, and that they're probably going to be like 50, 55%, if not more. So I really don't know what to do with the Steelers defense. I think they're a fine play in terms of like kind of the upside there, just because we're dealing with 2 rookie quarterbacks and Will Levis and Malik Willis. And, we have J.J. Watt, but they are missing Minkah Fitzpatrick for this game here. So that is definitely a big loss there in the secondary. But once again, I don't know what to make of this defensive play. The stats, the ownership percent says it's a terrible play. The salary says it's a terrible play. But we know the defenses have kind of been king so far in the showdowns this year. Boswell is pretty expensive here at 5,000 for a guy who really hasn't had, too many pop-off games here. I see a low scoring game, two bad offenses. They could rely on Boswell, but still, 5,000. He's definitely in play, but not my favorite price tag. Connor Hayward, he's an okay play. A lot of short passes to him. It's nothing downfield or too crazy, as you can see, 12, 12, and 9. So not a lot of upside there for me. He did get a random red zone look as well, like a running play. It was weird. So yeah, he's a fine play, but just not for me. Allen Robinson, third wide receiver. Not seeing a ton of targets here. Gonna be more so of a contrarian play there. I don't mind him. I'd actually probably prefer him over Cam Hayward, even though Cam Hayward's been a little bit more involved the past few weeks. And then Calvin Austin, a guy who was actually pretty good the first few weeks there, especially when they were missing Deontay. Hasn't seen much, but did see two targets yesterday. Super dart throw play here, but I think he's a fine play. He was wide receiver 4 there for the Steelers. Should see 10, 15 snaps, maybe a little bit more. That's really it's no real like dart throw plays here on the Steelers side. So in terms of core plays, it's going to be Deontay for me. I really like Derrick Henry, and I one of these slates where I do think it'll be more popular. Usually, running two running backs from the same team, very contrarian. But I think for this slate, just because the backups look way better right now compared to the starters, I do think it'll be a lot more normal to do that this slate here. But yeah, I love Deontay. I love Derrick Henry. I think right now I am going to throw Deontay there in the captain spot. Love him there as of right now. He's going to be absolutely peppered with targets. I do love Derrick Henry here, so if we're going to go that route, I don't mind building that. The Titans go up. I do like Will Levis for his rushing upside there, and I'm going to throw in one more. Can we fit in D Hop? We can't in terms of what I want. So I will throw on a Kunku there. I think that's a strong play. So we're gonna go with the fact that let's just assume kind of with this game script, Deontay Johnson, he's gonna get peppered because they're down because we have Derrick Henry there. I don't mind putting Derrick Henry in the captain spot as well. But let's just hope that in terms of this lineup build, Deontay Johnson is going off a little bit more there than Derrick Henry to pay off. We have Will Levis, we have a Kunku, 6,000 left over. We could get to one of the kickers. You could, get to one of the defenses. That'd help you be even more contrarian there if you play, a decent amount of the Titans against the Steelers defense. Because all rules are out the window here on showdown slates. We've seen the wildest, correlations and uncorrelations happen. So don't be afraid to get weird here for this slate. But as of right now, not a ton I like down there for the Steelers side or even the Tennessee Titans side. Traylon Burks interests me a little bit there, just because Will Levis does like to chuck the ball around. I think Boswell and Warren. I think that's a solid build. I like that build. So I'm going to rock with that for right now. In terms of core plays, it's going to be Deontay Johnson for me at captain, Derrick Henry, and then Okongwu there. So that's the potential lineup build. These are the core plays. Hopefully you guys like the video. Obviously stay updated with that D-Hop news because obviously it does pretty much change the landscape of the Titans offense there in terms of the receiving core. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.